The Life of Abraham Lincoln, a story of leadership and legacy. Abraham Lincoln, the 16th President of the United States, is one of the most revered figures in American history. His leadership through the Civil War and his role in ending slavery marked him as a pivotal figure in shaping the course of the nation's history. From his humble beginnings to his tragic death, Lincoln's life was defined by his unwavering belief in democracy, equality, and human rights. Birth and early life. Abraham Lincoln was born on February 12, 1809, in a small log cabin in Hodgenville, Kentucky, to Thomas Lincoln and Nancy Hanks Lincoln. The Lincolns were poor, and Abraham's early life was marked by hardship. His family moved frequently, first to Indiana in 1816 and then to Illinois in 1830, as they sought better prospects. His mother, Nancy, passed away when Lincoln was just 9 years old, a loss that deeply affected him. Despite these early hardships, Lincoln was a voracious reader, self-educating whenever he could. He often walked miles to borrow books, devouring whatever he could find to read. His love for learning eventually led him to study law on his own, passing the bar exam in 1836 and beginning a legal career in Springfield, Illinois. Early political career. In his early years, Lincoln became involved in local politics. He was elected to the Illinois state legislature in 1834 as a member of the Whig Party. Lincoln's early political views focused on internal improvement, such as building infrastructure, and he took a strong stance against the expansion of slavery into new territories. He was also known for his skill as a debater and public speaker, which would serve him well in his later career. In 1846, Lincoln was elected to the U.S. House of Representatives. While his time in Congress was brief, he made his mark by speaking out against the Mexican-American War, which he believed was an unjust conflict driven by the desire to expand slavery. This stance earned him little favor with his party, but began to shape his reputation as a principled leader. The Lincoln-Douglas debates. By the late 1850s, the issue of slavery had become a national debate. Lincoln was drawn into the political battle when he ran for a U.S. Senate seat in Illinois in 1858 against Stephen A. Douglas, a leading proponent of the doctrine of popular sovereignty, which allowed territories to decide for themselves whether to allow slavery. The Lincoln-Douglas debates, a series of 7 public confrontations between the two men, became legendary. In these debates, Lincoln argued that slavery was morally wrong and should not spread into the new territories. He stated, "A house divided against itself cannot stand." Although Lincoln lost the Senate race, the debates raised his national profile, making him one of the foremost spokesmen for the anti-slavery movement. The presidency in the Civil War. In 1860, Lincoln was elected as the Republican candidate for president. His platform was primarily focused on preventing the expansion of slavery, which alienated many in the southern states. Lincoln's election led to the secession of 7 southern states and the formation of the Confederate States of America, setting the stage for the Civil War. When Lincoln took office in March 1861, the nation was on the brink of war. The first shots were fired at Fort Sumter, South Carolina, in April 1861, and Lincoln was thrust into the most tumultuous period in American history. He moved quickly to raise an army and preserve the Union, and his leadership would be tested time and time again as the war dragged on. One of Lincoln's most important decisions was the issuance of the Emancipation Proclamation on January 1, 1863. Executive order declared that all slaves in Confederate-held territory were to be set free. While it did not immediately end slavery in the United States, it fundamentally changed the nature of the Civil War, turning it from a battle to preserve the Union into a war for human freedom. Lincoln's leadership during the war was characterized by his ability to maintain the resolve of the Union and to make tough decisions. He was willing to take political risks, such as suspending the writ of habeas corpus to deal with dissent and opposition, in order to keep the Union together. Lincoln's understanding of strategy, his commitment to equality, and his vision for a united nation made him an iconic figure in the eyes of many. Gettysburg Address. In November 1863, Lincoln delivered one of his most famous speeches, the Gettysburg Address, at the dedication of the Soldiers' National Cemetery in Pennsylvania. In just a few brief but powerful paragraphs, Lincoln redefined the war's purpose, declaring that the United States was a nation conceived in liberty and dedicated to the proposition that all men are created equal. The address is now seen as one of the greatest speeches in American history, encapsulating the ideals of democracy, freedom, and equality. The second term and the end of the war, Lincoln was re-elected in 1864, despite the war dragging on and the Union facing heavy casualties. His victory was seen as a mandate for continued prosecution of the war and for his vision of a post-war Union. By early 1865, the Confederacy was on the brink of collapse, and General Robert E. Lee surrendered to Ulysses S. Grant at Appomattox Courthouse on April 9, 1865, effectively ending the war. Assassination. Though the Union had won the war, Lincoln's work was far from over. He had begun to focus on the challenges of Reconstruction, which would involve rebuilding the South and ensuring rights for freed slaves. However, Lincoln would not live to see this vision fully realized. On the evening of April 14, 1865, just days after General Lee's surrender, Abraham Lincoln attended a play, Our American Cousin, at Ford's Theater in Washington, D.C. There, he was assassinated by John Wilkes Booth, a Confederate sympathizer. Lincoln was shot in the back of the head and died the following day, on April 15, 1865, at the age of 56. His assassination shocked the nation and plunged it into mourning. Lincoln had become more than just a president. He had become a symbol of the nation's ideals, and his death left a void that would take years to fill. Lincoln's legacy endures in the hearts of Americans and in the nation's history. He is remembered as the great emancipator, the president who preserved the Union and ended slavery. His leadership during the Civil War, his moral clarity, and his commitment to democracy have made him a central figure in the narrative of the United States. Today, Lincoln is often ranked among the greatest presidents in American history, with monuments like the Lincoln Memorial in Washington, D.C., serving as lasting tributes to his legacy. His Gettysburg Address and Emancipation Proclamation continued to inspire generations, reminding the world of the enduring power of freedom and equality. Abraham Lincoln's life was one of extraordinary challenge and achievement. His rise from a log cabin to the White House, his leadership in the face of war, and his moral courage in the fight against slavery ensured that he would be remembered not only as a great president, but also as one of the most significant figures in the history of the United States.